We're live.
Okay, we're live. It is the afternoon of March 19th, Senate Education Committee. And we have not what hadn't been on the agenda, but the way timing works on there, timing is working for Senator Hart to come in with an amendment that she has worked up for the so-called library bill, S232. You recall, well, you all recall the process of this bill, and the 5% and the 5% raised some issues in the money committees, and Senator Hart was out of one of those two, so I think absorbing what was going on, I was aware of it. We were aware of it, but Senator Harding prepared an amendment to help perhaps us to get on. So with that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the committee for having me. And I first want to say thank you so much for your work on S232, the library bill. I thought you guys did great work on it. I personally was supportive of where you ended up with the 5% and your support of libraries. I thought it was a great idea. And I also feel just sort of gratitude, but also I feel sad that you all didn't get the information that you needed from people you needed it from. And, you know, that it was a little rough going for a while. So just thank you. Even though I support the 5%, and I think your chair does as well, and we would like to see that going forward, the rumblings from the administration is that they do not support it, and there's a bit of concern about the fate of the bill. So we were trying to find a path forward that would satisfy them, but also satisfy the Appropriations Committee, because that's where there's the biggest kind of pushback on the bill. The Finance Committee did vote it out 7-0 as is. But they also knew that amendment was being worked on. So this is the amendment. I run it through your chair and the chair of Appropriations, and the three of us are on board with one little caveat that I'll tell you about as we go through it. But
so there has to be clear. So their 7-0 vote really was kind of anticipating this.
Correct. They knew that, and we were just trying to move it along. Yeah. But they didn't know what the details were of this. But so this amendment, just the large picture thing that it does is it gets rid of the 5%, 95%, because that was the thing that had the biggest pushback on it. I have if you have the amendment in front of you, in the first instance of amendment, I just added a finding, which, you know, is mostly just to sort of lay it out there that libraries have for more than 125 years provided diverse after school and summer programs and literacy opportunities for all children free of charge. These programs often include literacy, arts, technology, or science education, nutritious meals, and creative recreational activities. So just saying what libraries have done for many years. So the substance really is in section 2, or the second instance of amendment. This is the section of the bill that had the 95% in it. This takes that out. It makes there's some yellow highlighting in the amendment only because that was what was in the second draft of the amendment, but there's no difference between the highlighted and unhighlighted parts. This makes clear that that the funding could be that the grant program is to establish a grant program that supports sustaining or expanding universal after school and summer programs, meaning that they could be existing things that have been going on for a long time, or they could be expanding things that doesn't have to be about the expansion. And then the second part is where the 95% was, paragraph 2 at the bottom. It removes that, but makes clear that this funding is public, private, or nonprofit organizations, including public libraries, schools, and volunteer mentoring programs. Turns out, after talking with Senator Perchlik, that volunteer mentoring programs are kind of in the same position that public libraries have been in with this program, in that they tried to apply and they haven't been able to. Senator Heffernan and I actually, you remember the thing we went to at Moncton School and had lunch there, that was a volunteer mentoring program. They have tried to,
What was that called?
I think it's like Mentor Vermont.
Oh, yeah,
And it's
okay.
like, people who volunteer to be mentors for kids, and they're usually community-based, really kind of small group things. And they have tried to access this funding and haven't. So Senator Perchlik asked me to add that. The agency may allocate a portion of the funds annually to the Department of Libraries for the purpose of providing sub-grants to public libraries to sustain or create summer and after-school programming. So in lieu of the 5%, that's what this is that they may give them a chunk of money and then the Department of Libraries can sub-grant it, but it just doesn't say how much. And then a coalition or group of public libraries may also apply for a grant from the agency or the department. So if all of the libraries in Windham County, for example, in Senator Machine's district wanted to band together and apply for the money for their summer programs, they could do that. This next paragraph is the one that the Appropriations Committee, I think, is going to take the biggest look at, which is the agency right now has $500,000 to administer the program. One of the pushbacks that I got in talking to the chair of the committee, that the advisory committee, is, you know, we've already allocated a bunch of money. We're not going to have the money to give to libraries or other organizations. So, you know, I, in this amendment, suggest, well, maybe you don't need as much for administration. 500,000 is quite a bit of money to administer a relatively small grant program. I think appropriations is going to look at this more and try to get some information from AOE. As you can imagine, AOE doesn't want to give up the money, but
If they simplify the form, it should take a lot less.
exactly. And I think also they give out grants that are for 3 to 5 years, so it's kind of a one-time thing that but regardless, approach is going to look at that and it will undoubtedly change. And then this is to get to some of the issues that I know you all talked about. The agency shall create a simple application and reporting process that reduces barriers to grant program participation for small community-based organizations, such as rural libraries, volunteer mentoring programs, and similar organizations. And then the final thing, the bottom of page 2, it keeps the state librarian on the advisory committee. You all have that in your amendment. It's just here because it was amending that section. And then annually, the advisory committee shall solicit input on the grant program and procedures established pursuant to the section. The advisory committee shall hold a meeting to discuss the public input and any plans to implement recommended changes to the grant program. Meaning they got to get feedback and change the process if it's not working for potential adherence. That is the amendment. The bill is in appropriations right now, so it's sort of like out of all of our hands, but I am going there at 3 o'clock to present the amendment. So I would love to be able to give them information about what your committee thinks.
Cool. You have, I think,
There it is.
okay.
Just wondering if there's, kind of lose track of things after
Of course.
passes, some way we get a report back on. I'm concerned about the libraries, they operate on fuel strength.
Get a report back on whether they got any of the grants.
Well, what you're saying they're gonna report back on, what money was available. If we get additional load of cannabis tax, that's where the money's coming from.
Yep.
Maybe they could give them $250,000.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering how we provide oversight of that.
I'm all for more oversight. Do they already do an annual report though? They might.
So we also, the committee could always have them in.
Right.
So,
So I had Jen up a report for this,
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, you're the reporter.
and the understanding was I watched the testimony back again from the libraries. The libraries does an annual report, AOE does an annual report, so AOE first would report that they actually did provide the money. And the libraries do a report, instead of doing a separate report for this specifically,
Okay.
they agreed just to fold it into their annual.
That makes sense.
Version. Thank you. I think I'm hoping for more clarity or definitions as to what a volunteer mentoring program is. Because, for example, a nonprofit organization, it's easy to look at the nonprofit laws. It's easy to look at a nonprofit tax reporting, but Is there anything that defines what a volunteer mentoring program is? Anyone?
That is a very good question. I added this stuff about the mentoring programs for Senator Kirchler. So it's really, I can see if he has more information. There is an organization, I think it's called Mentoring Vermont or Mentor Vermont, that runs most of these, but they are community based. So the one that Senator Heffernan and I went to was specific to the Little Moncton School. But I don't know, that's a good point, making sure it's not just a fly by night kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course, they wouldn't give them the grant probably, but I saw, actually, we'll do something a little unorthodox.
Sorry.
You seem to know what you're talking about.
Thanks.
You're about to tell.
My wife, I'm from Cabot, and they have a mentoring program in our
And
town.
you want,
You
you
don't
want.
need to identify yourself.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Chris Farming. I'm on the school board in Cabot, but lots of people wear different hats in small towns.
Mhm.
So my wife, Mary Ann, has been the sort of leader of the board of our mentoring group in Cabot. And the way it works is all the mentors in our community and across Central Vermont are volunteers. But in the budget they have for our townwide mentoring group, there's a coordinator that is paid a stipend for based on how many hours she or she works. So it's largely volunteer, but I know they have some money in for the person in our town that reaches out and gets new mentors from the community and matches them up with kids.
Thank
Largely
you.
volunteer.
Yeah, that's helpful. I think generally speaking, I'm hoping just to get some more information about what guardrails there are in statute. I guess I just want to make sure that that somebody can't just say, I'm a volunteer mentoring program, please give me money. And, I mean, I'm all for, the volunteer mentoring programs in general, but I just want to make sure there's some degree of guardrails and,
The ones that I know in there also is a mentoring program called Everybody Wins with our elementary school in Middlebury and then the high school and middle school. I think the middle school actually has a mentoring program where Middlebury college students come in and are mentors for the middle schoolers. So maybe if we said something, just thinking out loud here, like school or preach or something like that, that the school is letting them in, then they must be legit, but I don't know. I can also ask Senator Kirchler for more information. See if there's some way to describe it so it's clear that they are.
There's a
Yeah.
group mentor.
It's, okay, so Senator Governor.
So we have, the agency may allocate. That also means they may not, is that correct?
Yeah.
Hearing from the libraries, it's been a chore for them to get money out of the AOE.
Yeah.
Can we change that wording that, I don't know, shall allocate? You think that's gonna get too much pushback?
Well, that's what how the bill started. It was like a shall allocate a reasonable portion, I think, or something I said, because I wasn't sure how much to say. I didn't want to pick a number. And then you guys made it really clear that it should be 5%, which again, I totally appreciate it. I'm gonna guess we would still get pushback if we made it into a shall.
But if we do only up to 250,000, I would think that that's more than, it's about compromise always in this building. And you're cutting the money in half anyway, and I think it should be a shall, not a may. It's just my opinion, but
Yeah.
Well, there's an application process, so the people apply to it. So if you say shall, that means they have to get. They have to apply, but they're also gonna have to get.
It's the whole point. The whole
Yeah.
point that the Department of Library gets a cut.
Right.
Not that they get in line for application process, but they get a certain amount of funding that they then divvy out to the libraries.
So there'd be a need for an application process.
I'm saying, no, AOE's got the application process.
Right.
If they don't have money, it's not a shall. Or program.
do you believe we'll get a lot of pushback if we put the shall for 250,000?
Well, the 250,000 is I didn't make a direct connection between the two. I was just sort of suggesting if you're looking for money, you could cut your administrative expenses. But my guess is that appropriations is gonna take a look at that and maybe not go for it. Just speculating here. But so I just want to ask you, Senator Weeks, are you suggesting also a shall, that we should
I
change
am.
it to shall?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of the bill. It's 99% of the bill.
Yeah,
Yeah, other than that, it doesn't really change it.
Right.
Just puts in that they
Because
they could.
they're eligible now.
yeah,
Well, except the one thing it does, not under about that, the shall, but the one thing it really does do is what we were trying to get them to do when we got them back in here that second time was to put together an application that is simple, a simple application and a simple reporting process.
Those
And
take
that
20
now,
hours.
that's now in here. So that's what we were looking for when we got them back in here. I'm not relating that to the shall or not, but it does do that.
Does, regarding, I mean, so wasn't the main idea to say, you know, all of these smaller, more rural libraries with perhaps 1 or 2 employees, you know, they don't have the bandwidth to go through this 10, 15-hour applications. So let's give that to the Department of Libraries. And the Department of Libraries can fill out their application, provide it to AOE, and then the department will get funds, assuming their application is approved. I'm wondering, and I'm all in support of making sure the department gets funds here, but doesn't that, it seems like changing it to a shall kind of takes it a few extra steps further. And just saying the department is going to get this money. They don't even have to do the application the way all these other entities also have to do the application. So, you know, department, do the application. Here's the money probably that you'll get, and then disperse it to your lower subordinate libraries. It's just commenting.
So
Yeah, a couple things. We didn't envision that the Department of Libraries would provide an application to the AOE for their originally 5%. We just assumed that it was directed. You shall 5% cannabis tax revenue. There wasn't an application there, so that may have been maybe misconception. But I went back through all the videos, didn't see anything like that. Okay, but I mean, you know, we're here in the realm of developing this process. So it's what I wanted to make a comment on was the 250,000. So I did go back and do some math and listen to people talk again. In that, where is it? He had envisioned 5% of cannabis tax revenue, which is it's 2.3 million cannabis tax revenue for the year. Again, this would change year to year based on cannabis tax revenue income, but that it would have been 117,000 per year, not 250,000.
the 5%.
The 5% would have equated to, for the past year of cannabis tax revenue, 117,000. Yeah, just to kind of level set, you know, is 250,000 right? Well, maybe, maybe not. You're adding on top of it volunteer mentoring programs, which would be, you know, another slice of funding. So
Well, I mean, the volunteer mentoring programs are already, they could already apply now. They're just having the same problems libraries are having. And the may allocate a portion that's just for the Department of Libraries, but I hear you in terms of that the 5% wasn't necessarily as much as people thought it was. It was just a guaranteed amount.
yeah, another.
yeah, just one other point that during the whole conversation, several organizations and committee members raised the fear, the risk that other folks would pop up for
Yeah.
carve outs.
Yeah.
Here we go. Okay. And, you know, we're early in the process. We don't even have a bill that's gotten off the floor yet. We've got not a significant group, but the group that wants their cut.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen again. It's gonna happen again. So you just have to keep that in mind.
Right, and that's kind of why I put it as a may, is that it doesn't require a carve out. It just says, hey, you could do this. Because I think one of the things that one of the pushbacks has been, this is a lot, you know, we have to approve all these tiny little applications, a lot more time. Well, they can just give the money to the Department of Libraries, and the Department of Libraries can take care of it. They can allocate it to their libraries. They know the libraries, they do, you know, so. It saves them time to just take a chunk and give it to the department, but they don't have to do it.
And that's what I don't want. There should be something.
What we should probably do is let you go back to committee.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
well, was hoping to be able to tell approach what you
Oh,
guys thought.
that's right.
Cause I have to go there at
Gotta go
3,
there, great.
so
Yeah.
let me know.
So the Department of Libraries as a government agency, they budget every year, so. So we're gonna give them this additional money, they may give them additional money over and above the budget amount that they asked for.
Yeah, but it's not for the Department of Libraries. They would distribute it out to local libraries, so some of the libraries in all of our
Don't they do
districts,
that now?
they don't get any of this money.
So,
Yeah.
yes and no.
Well, they can.
So I did study this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They don't, not out of their own funding, do they distribute funds, but there is a, and I can't remember the family name, but there's a family fund that they take that money, they distribute, remember, $350 per library, right, just shotgun it out. So they-
$350.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, they're happy to get it.
And some were happy to get.
I'm sure.
It's for their summer reading program.
Tiny little library.
So here's a thought for the committee, given, you know, where we are. That we say that we are amenable to this amendment. We leave to the appropriations committee the issue of the 250 versus 500. We can even say, you know, put our thumb on the scale for the 250, but we don't know enough to
Mhm.
leave that one to the appropriations committee. And we say that we would prefer the word shall to may, but we don't want to have that tank the bill.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
you could convey, I mean, by the way, I'm just suggesting this for the.
I like the sound of that.
But that we, let them know that's what we would like.
For even if they, sorry to interrupt, but even if they went at like 150,000 that they will get and are to get more. A base amount, that you're gonna give them at least this much.
I was in the committee when, why was I there? Oh, chair's meeting, and I got the reaction immediately from.
Yeah.
For the
And, right,
the shall, the money.
Yeah.
That did not, I could tell the body language was not.
yeah, that's the vibe I'm getting as well. So that's why I was trying to find a middle ground here.
Yes.
So as a junior senator, I need some guidance here, because again, this is all about the committee of jurisdiction. These are funds which are controlled by the Agency of Education, subdivided to an organization that still falls under the purview of the Education Committee. What is the Appropriations Committee getting involved for? Because they can.
Well, it's also, but it's allocation of state resources, so they do.
From a resource that is meant to go to education.
Already earmarked, so towards after school, no less.
Okay, why don't we just go, let me rephrase it a little bit with that in mind. But the 250, the 500, we don't know enough to really lay that out, in my view. So we'll leave that to them. And we prefer shall. By the committee wants shall.
Okay.
And then if that's a real issue, you can come back to us.
Okay,
Um,
well, you can count on me to relay that message forcefully.
Just a quick question, and maybe this is more so for Captain Mayo. Captain Bill.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I had previously thought that the Department of Libraries is going to submit its one application, and that's sort of the track record. There's an audit trail of where this money is coming from, going to, and what they're doing with it. And so if there is no application, is there still some documentation of where the Department of Libraries is dispersing this money? And
She made that a very point
Yeah.
that they would do their annual, then show where the money goes.
okay,
That was the first question I was here this afternoon. It's like an audit trail or report of distribution.
I figured there would be, but since,
And I had librarian, I can't remember her name, but she was like, yes, we do that anyway, so they're happy to provide that every year.
They'll pay it.
Yeah, it's,
Okay, so do you want to do a straw poll or?
Want to make sure it's ready for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's, yeah, what'd you say?
Oh, I'm going Snickers.
Okay.
Snickers?
Said it, yes.
No, it's not. This is germane to this committee and I come personally at, all these folks poking their fingers into it. That's
Can I
my,
quote that?
Cause our chair
Yes.
on the appropriation.
yeah, I'm kind of done with, yeah, yes.
So shall, yes, with the shall and the 250, the 500 or something.
Okay. That's okay. I will let you guys know what happens and thank you for this partnership
Thanks for coming.
and for the
How's your
amounts.
James doing?
Okay.
Welcome
They're
to you.
dangerous. Okay, thanks, Reed. Thank you guys.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, what happens?
You have more kids?
Okay, so we apologize to our witnesses who were expecting to be on it too, but in crossover, this is life. So switching now to the real agenda for the day, we're looking for school board input on the draft map. It's a draft map that was posted definitely yesterday,
Yeah.
well, every day, right? For the last couple of days. Yeah, and looking to finalize the portion for the SUs. We asked school school boards to let us know whether they're in the right district or they think whether we moved or give us any input. So our first witness is Seamus. James, okay. Abshir, chair of the South Burlington School Board by Zoom.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, great. So my views are my own and do not represent the views of the South Burlington School Board or the South Burlington School District. I just want to start by saying that. So today I want to talk about how public schools can help heal the blue collar, white collar divide in Vermont politics. I want to talk about how this blue collar, white collar divide has reached a critical level in South Burlington and is already causing our schools to get worse. And I want to talk about how I believe your committee can help by requiring school districts to merge until they provide certain services instead of requiring like a certain number of students or something like that. So first, about the blue collar, white collar divide. The Republican Party has become the party of blue collar Americans. According to Pew Research, a more than 10 percentage point gap has developed over the last 10 years. And this means that if you have a college degree or you don't have a college degree, we can predict what party you're in, basically. At the same time, Republicans have stopped believing in public schools. According to Pew Research, support for K-12 public education has dropped by almost 10 percentage points among Republicans in the last 5 years. That's because, in my opinion, public schools have failed people who want to join the blue-collar world. Kids who are excited to learn about how to be electricians, carpenters, and HVAC technicians don't get the same priority as kids who are excited about going to college. We do have excellent centers for technology here in the state of Vermont. But last year, South Burlington had a 50% acceptance rate to CTEs and a 0% acceptance rate for HVAC. That is 4 South Burlington kids raised their hand to study HVAC at a vulnerable time in their lives and were told the system didn't have a spot for them. At the same time, school newsletters celebrate the Neuroscience Club. We have 14 advanced placement classes in our district alone and dozens more in districts across Chittenden County. We have 725 AP enrollments in our high school alone. School board is mostly by and for college-educated parents. That's the white-collar world. Yesterday, I called around the county to confirm what I already knew. Outside of a CTE, we have only one functioning wood shop in the entire county.
Is that CVU?
It's Lyman Hunt.
Oh, I think CVU has a too. Anyway,
Sure. And remember, CTEs aren't even accessible until 11th grade. You have to make it through 11 years of school before you get to a class dedicated to working with your hands. Then you have to be bused 20 minutes each way to Essex or Burlington, and even then, there's only a 50% acceptance rate. Unsurprisingly, our schools have lost the trust of blue collar voters. They don't recognize what we're teaching and feel disrespected. In South Burlington, we can barely pass budgets. This year, our budget passed by 100 votes out of 4,000. This has been making our schools worse for years. We haven't been able to renovate or build. We're locked in a downward spiral. Luckily, the solution is inside school districts. This year, South Burlington is revising our mission, and I hope that we will place the trades at the same priority as college. This will force our superintendent to allocate our own local budget toward the trades without depending on outside funding. Hopefully, we'll start to see foundational education around carpentry, electronics, and other vocational education in our middle school in the coming years. So, what can your committee do about it? Think about redistricting as an opportunity to improve education for future blue collar workers. According to a September 2025 report by the think tank New America, redistricting can increase fairness and economic integration by double digits. They were thinking about racial fairness, but I think it also applies to blue collar and white collar fairness. So instead of requiring districts to be of a certain size, set expectations of what all school districts must provide. It can't be a very long list or it'll be unworkable, but there's one key requirement that I think you should have. Require districts to provide foundational trade education directly in their schools, starting in middle school, without needing kids and parents to fill out forms, deal with multi-district bureaucracy, get on buses, and go out of the district. I'm not sure that Winooski or South Burlington or Colchester would be able to do this alone. We might have to merge. But then we would have positive reasons to merge, not just saving money. And let me be clear, adopting a shared services model to serve blue collar interests while providing white collar interests directly in district schools is not fair. It's a cop-out. No matter how well you manage your BOCES, if kids have to go through extra bureaucracy to get the education they need, that is not equal treatment. I suggest, in closing, that you require each district in Vermont to serve its blue collar and white collar constituents equally, or merge with other districts until it can do so. So that is my statement. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Just, this committee is definitely thinking about CTE. And the things you're talking about, you've articulated it slightly differently, which is helpful actually for us to hear. But it's definitely on the radar. I'll say that much. Senator Hinsdale has worked on it, and the whole committee, I think, is too. But we have a question here to start with.
I did. Thank you, Mr. So I'm sure you're familiar with the CTE based maps that were circulating during the task force over last summer and into the fall. From that perspective, does what you're saying, what you're advocating, does the CTE centric maps solve that problem or not?
So, I went and I spoke to Bob Travers over at Essex, and I saw that he is running. It's an amazing program that any kid would be lucky to get into, right? I really viewed it as an elite educational institution. But what he and his assistant and I talked about was we really have different problems. In South Burlington, a kid who is interested in this kind of thing, they can't get access to that CTE until 11th grade. And even once they get access to it, we only have that acceptance rate. So I think that they're separate problems.
Okay, thank you.
How many students in your district?
About 2,600.
How many, you have one high school?
Yeah.
One high school, and how many elementaries?
We have 3 elementary, 1 middle, 1 high school.
Okay. So you're a fairly sized district, okay. And how many kids in the high school?
I think it's like 500 or 600, but don't quote me on that. I'm not quite sure.
It would have to be higher if you.
Probably higher. Yes.
Probably higher, yeah.
I
Yeah,
just
go ahead.
want to make sure I'm fully clear. If you feel it is within the purview of the school district, you and your superintendent as the board, to allow students to access CTE before 11th grade. Like what is making it 11th grade for your district?
You know, that's a good question. One of the things I talked about with Bob when I visited Essex was apparently we did try some kind of a pilot program where the CTE sent an instructor to our school. And actually the instructor for that school happened to be with Bob at that time. But apparently that program didn't work out because, well, first of all, the reason they did that program was to get the CTE funds in order to support that. But then it didn't work out because there was just, I guess, too much bureaucracy, too much difficulty in getting the instructor from Essex over to South Burlington on a regular basis, and all that stuff. And so that's where, I think the question is a good one. Maybe the school board could say, superintendent, try to get kids into CTEs earlier, but you still have the same problems that there's all this bureaucracy, they have to leave the district. And so that's where I was saying that the solution for us, if we can manage it at our size, is to try to do it in district with our own money.
So you're suggesting that your district needs to get bigger in order for that to happen? So you have enough critical mass to support.
My impression is that even though South Burlington looks like a scaled district, I think that we're undersized personally. I think it's hard for us to attract, well, that's a whole nother topic, but I do think that if you look at the services that we provide to students and you say, okay, I want to serve both blue collar and white collar, and that means that we need to do X, I'm not sure we can do X at our current size. It's possible.
And have you been in discussions with neighboring districts about mergers? About a merger?
Not yet. I think our superintendents have connected, but not at the board level.
Okay. Senator Wood, did you have a question?
Well, for you, didn't we have a bill that said we're gonna get exposure for kids that are in school, but they're actually gonna get to go to CTE?
It's mentioned in 313.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but at this point, it's aspirational.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they don't have enough money to even get the kids in high school.
It's played in Vermont.
Thank you. That was thoughtful testimony. I think the point you've made about kind of being in scale, but still not quite big enough is an interesting point. Interesting for us to hear.
Okay.
So that's so you're welcome to stay on, of course, and listen while we get through, but you may have other things you have to do. But thank you very much for taking the time to meet with us.
Thank you very much for your service.
Chris, for me?
Yes,
For me. Yes, you're on.
it's Irish. Thank you. I did Tuesday. Thanks for taking the time to hear from me today. I just wanted to mention before I launch into what I was going to talk about is that I was a teacher at Mohegan High School in Hyde Park for 30 years, and that's a high school that served maybe started out 800 kids in high school, now down to about 600. But what they did there was they had a very popular pre-tech program for ninth graders, and the kids would basically have their entire curriculum in a room, and they would have, I think English had done at one point, but the entire room was, half the size of a gym. And in that program, they were able to get into a wide range of shop skills, if you will, trade skills, but they'd also had introductions to the different career center programs that were next door in the big CTE. So I think some high schools have realized that
students are interested in that early on and have made, resources available to get them into it earlier.
Yeah, our real goal, I think, is to even have that happen in like 7th and 8th grade.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, we had at one point I taught science and we had a hands-on physics science course for 9th graders where they would get their science credits by figuring out electricity, HVAC, et cetera. So it's just great. I can do math while I'm doing this with my hands.
Yeah.
This is awesome. And you have math credit.
Math is designed for that.
Yeah, I mean, I just, what this gentleman talked about is real because when I was teaching 8 or 10 years ago, some of the brightest kids in my advanced biology class would come in and say, I'm going to the tech center next year. And why? You go to college. Yeah, but I'm not going to pay for it. I can't pay for it. And you talk to the parents to say, our son is bright. He's motivated. He wants to do something with his life and he can't wait through 4 years of college. So, I think maybe it was just the SU and the district that was in, but it was very much of a, my son wants to do well in school so that he can do something valuable and he sees being an electrical engineer very valuable. Anyway, sorry, I was a teacher.
And maybe you've done the whole wood shop. I just, yeah.
Yeah, we saw it.
We saw it and we saw the home building, right?
Yeah.
But I want more wood shops. I have wood shops.
The other thing that most classroom teachers will tell you is that having a block during the day where the kids can do hands-on work is hugely beneficial towards their focus in a maybe less active classroom. Just build this and this, Mr. Tormey. Okay, now we can talk about DNA. Okay, all right. Maybe I'll make a model of that. Anyway, thanks for taking the time today. My name is Chris Tormey. I'm a resident of Cabot. I've lived there full-time since 1989 with my wife, Mary Ann. Mentioned she's a mentoring person. I also have 3 graduated sons who went to school at Cabot School. It's a pre-K through 12 school. And I've been on the school board since 2004. And I come here first, I guess, with a message. As both a school board member and a teacher, I know that your goal in this committee is to try to make education better for our kids and also hopefully less expensive. And obviously, I'm familiar with that challenge. So I want to talk today to you about 2 parts of the work you're doing. One is the map that you've been working on. And the second one is I think it's called governance modernization document. And so I wanted to touch first on the map. I want to let you know in Cabot, we appreciate the revision that was done this week that places Cabot School District in an enlarged SU in the Caledonia area. For the past 5 years, my school district has been supported very well by the Caledonia Central SU. That's a SU including Danville, Twinfield, Peacham, us, and Calcoa. And so what we've gotten out of that SU arrangement is that we have a great deal of support with administration, but we're also doing a good bit of colleagueship and collegiality around things like elective courses for kids, sports. We don't have necessarily enough kids to field a soccer team. We'll pull up another high school, but also having things like professional development, et cetera. And to that end, last summer, our school board asked the legislature's redistricting task force that if they come up with a map during their work that would include enlarged SUs, we would like to be included in the one in Caledonia. So that's where we're coming from. We did that for 2 reasons, and probably you've heard that from other schools, not only for the support and the collaboration that an SU makes possible, but it also allows schools like ours to continue to be an independent school district and not merged. And we feel like we're getting some benefits from the SU, but another big benefit is as a town, we can continue to have what we feel like is the greatest amount of control over how our school operates and about its future. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you again for which I think is proper placement for Cabot. Second thing I want to mention is just this modernization document, which is maybe 30 pages long or so that I also looked at. I have some concerns about one part of it. I want to start with the parts that I think are really beneficial.
What modernization document is 30 pages?
It is called the Governance Modernization Document.
Authored by who?
I believe you folks.
30 pages.
Is it our bill? Is that what it's called?
Oh, you're talking about the bill? Or are you talking about the narrative that went with,
It's 33 pages and there's, the first 10 pages are about enlarging SUs. Then there's a section about for the first year, the districts are encouraged to seek voluntary mergers. And then 2 years later, the districts are,
Gotta get a number thing.
yeah.
are we on the same document? Okay.
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah.
All right, okay, cool. So, so I guess the first question is, are you the authors of that or not?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, right, gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm in the right one. All right. So first off, I think as a small school board chair, two things that I think are really valuable that I saw in that plan. One is the ability to make larger SUs. I think, the support for both funding and also the democratic process to do that, I think would be really helpful for, to achieve some economies of scale and some efficiency and some savings. The other thing that I saw in that document that I think is useful is encouraging school districts to voluntarily seek out other districts that they might be able to be a good fit with and merge with. The thing that I think I have the most concern about, which I hope maybe you'll reconsider, is the section that says, after a couple of years of, or even after, I think after a couple of years of allowing school districts to voluntarily consider merging, the Secretary of the Agency of Education has the right to come in and say, in your words, I think you're trying to get the number of districts down from 100 something to 50 something. And so that part of the language that says, in order to reduce the number of districts by half, the AOE can come in and force merge districts to get there. I have several concerns about that, and I guess I'd put them under three categories. The first category would be, does it actually achieve the goals that we're seeking to achieve, i.e. saving money and improving things for kids? I know that the legislative task force spent 4 months or so last year going around the state, interviewing folks, having hearings, doing their own research. They got over 1,000 pieces of public comment. And that task force reached the conclusion that just by making larger districts did not necessarily achieve either of those goals, either saving money or improving things for kids. They also found out that the whole process that we witnessed in Act 46 was, if you stop everything and say, the next couple of years, you're going to work with this district to merge, even though you don't want to, that basically takes energy and time away from maybe more productive efforts in the SU or school district to get better. Last concern under maybe not doing much is that the task force found out that at least a couple of the things that are the big cost drivers currently in Vermont education, that is health insurance and special education, wouldn't really be impacted by making larger districts in their view. The second thing I had a concern about was that forced merging districts might inevitably or might eventually have some big impacts on communities in Vermont. Because of the current numbers that we have in our schools, obviously there's room in schools for more kids. So if you force merge, say, 3 smaller districts into one, before too long, budget season will come along and the single board that is governing those 3 schools will have a hard discussion about, we have rising costs. What are we going to do to make a budget that the community can support?
So that's where the foundation formula is supposed to.
Okay, I'll finish up this one up. One of the things that can happen in that discussion is that that single board can say, in order to make things work this year, we are going to close either part or all of the given community schools because we have room for you over here. And so my concern about that, if that happens, is that it may in fact solve the problem for that new district in a given year. It'll make their budget more tolerable to the voters. But my concern is what happens to the towns that lose their elementary schools. I know in this state, we've had lots of discussion, lots of interest in how do we keep Vermonters in this state? How do we attract young families, working families from elsewhere to come to Vermont? My contention is that if you are cutting the number of school districts from 115 to 57, whatever the math is, if you lose in that process, which you might, 2 or 3 dozen community schools, what does that do to the attractiveness of those communities to these young families who are trying to get here? That's a concern I have. I want to zero back in on my town because I've lived there since 1989 and I'm familiar with our trajectory, if you will. I think I made a graphic that might make people understand where we're at. It's a large ridge with a valley on either side. That's an enrollment graph. And so in 1989 or 1983, when we first moved there for a short time, the numbers were. Sorry about that. Get back to the right page. In 1983, the enrollment was 180 kids at Cabot School. And by the turn of the millennium, it was up to about 250. And now we're down to about 160. Cabot's enrollment curve has followed the states. We've lost about 25% of our kids in the last 2 decades. But I don't think that in itself is a reason enough to start consolidating schools that are often focal point of their, that might result in losing a number of schools that are now the focal point of their communities. I want to mention, I guess, on that same line, one specific example from our town. The general consensus, or one of the arguments for merging schools, is that you will somehow have lesser cost. And over the hill from where I live is the town of Calais. Calais is part of the Washington Central Unified Union School District. It's commonly known as U32. That's their high school. Union 32 high school and middle school and 5 elementary schools now, since maybe 10 years ago, have a single merged district with one board. That board is in charge of the budget. That board is also in charge of figuring out how many schools continue to run in that district. This past year, their U32 district's budget, elementary schools, middle school, and high school, is about $43 million. The cost per long-term weighted average daily membership pupil, the new calculation, their spending per pupil in that model was about $16,000. And the impact on taxes for them was in the neighborhood of, I think the average across the 5 towns was a little under $2 per $100 worth of assessed homestead. We in Cabot are on this side of that ridge. We have 160 kids. We are a school district. We are unmerged. And we have very vigorous debates every year at our board level and also at the town meeting about how much we're going to spend. Our spending per pupil this year is about $2,000 below the merged district to our west. We have about $14,000 spending per pupil, and our budget, which just passed, suggested that we would probably have taxes in the neighborhood of $1.30 per $100 worth of assessed value. So, in conclusion, I've seen firsthand in my town the very positive impact that a strong dynamic school can have in a small community. As you work this spring to fashion a plan that can both limit costs and improve things for kids, I'd ask you to keep in mind the impact of that plan on the vitality of small communities like Cabot's. With that in mind, I strongly suggest that your committee revise your draft in 2 important ways. One is, I think you should definitely include a piece in there about the value of shared service structures like BOCES. I think they've been shown to realize savings in other states, and I think it would be important to include that in any kind of plan you have. The other thing I would say is to think considerably about eliminating the forced merger by the state language that's there now, and instead support the efforts of schools like ours to explore voluntary mergers or other ways that they can improve opportunities for the kids, including, for instance, in our case, maybe a regional high school. But doing that, but at the same time allowing small, independent, proud districts like ours to continue to sustain and improve our hometown schools. And in so doing, sustain and improve the communities that they're part of. So that's what I have for you today, and thanks for listening. Appreciate any comments or questions you might have.
I one clarifying question and one bigger question.
Sure.
Maybe you said this. You don't operate a high school?
We do operate a
You
high
have
school.
Cabot
Yeah.
High School.
It's a pre-K through 12 school.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, the whole, okay. It's
Yeah.
pre-K through 12.
Yeah.
That's it. My bigger question is something I ask my school boards in my district.
Sure.
Are you out promoting housing projects and supporting housing projects in your community? Because all I hear when I hear this is, you know, the extremely high cost of living across the state, and that your teachers and your families have nowhere to live. I do think that's contributing to the loss of families and students in our schools.
I think you're right. I think, to answer your question, we, as a town are in basically headwaters of the Nooski River. It's a fairly narrow valley. There is a good deal of hayland and farmland that could tap for housing. And, in the last couple of years, our select board has started to look at that more. So I think the answer is yes. The other, part of the situation in our town is that, it happens to be a town that has, I think, one of the higher rates of homeschooling in Washington County. And so there is housing, and there are people living there with kids, but not all of them are going to the local public school.
Mhm.
And so, I think our challenge is to, make sure that, we can provide enough housing for families that would want to come, and that's an ongoing challenge, I guess.
What's the nearest other high school?
What's that?
What high school is nearest to you?
So Twinfield High School, which is for the kids of Plainfield and Marshfield, is about 8 or 10 miles to our west. And Danville High School is about the same distance to the east on the other side of Joe's Pond.
And what's their population?
Their population is, each of them are about twice the size, by district and also by high school as ours. And so our, there were 3 pre-K through 12 districts in the same SU. We have about 160, 170 students pre-K through 12. Each of those districts, both Twinfield and Danville, have about double that.
Have you talked about where it would make sense for a regional high school to do this?
We have had those conversations for years. I think, the thought is that were we to end up in the same SU as Danville, it could be possible, to have those discussions again. I think at this point, the Act 46 discussion in each of those, schools was vigorous and, thoughtful. I think what's happened in the 10 years since Act 46 is each of our schools has lost students at probably the same rate as the rest of the state has. So now it's a different conversation. We're more challenged than we were a decade ago to have, the programs and the economies of scale that we would like. Yes, go ahead.
So I'm here, I heard what you said.
Sure.
I'm thinking that I'm hearing the same thing I've been hearing through this whole process, very good, the whole biennium.
Mhm.
Just don't want to do anything different. What do you recommend we do?
Sure. I guess I'll go back to the voluntary merger, suggestion.
Let's start, let's say we support that.
Okay, I think that, the difference between now and Act 46 in my part of the state is that there is a much higher perception that we need to increase the opportunities for older students.
Have you done anything about voluntary merger as a school board?
We have not.
Okay, you could be.
We could be.
There's nothing says you can't be doing that right now in anticipation. Some point, we gotta stop taking testimony and we have to do something. And because there could be half the people aren't gonna be happy
Sure.
with what we do. Some will. So then we're gonna go through this whole process again.
Yeah.
I'm not lost. And I'm 74 years old. I don't have 2 more years to waste in my life. So, and I'm not saying that it's a waste. I'm just saying that we haven't done anything. And it could have been done.
I
We could
think,
have come up with a plan in the first 2 months of the last session. And we didn't.
I think I'll answer that 2 ways. One is that I think that there is, number one, more of an appetite to have those discussions than there was even 4 or 5 years ago. And number 2, I think when we brought that up among the school boards of those 3 somewhat neighboring pre-K through 12 schools in the last several years, we've started to do that on a limited basis, sharing elective classes and sharing sports. And I think the question was, is it time to have a regional high school with our 3 high schools, just like Beloit Union is? And in that mix was, I think 2 of the schools were very much in favor of it. Third one, being a neighbor of St. John's Free Academy, was much less interested for reasons having to do with other choices in their neighborhood. The other question when this current round of school reform came in is, will the state even allow us to make, a year ago? Now it is a year ago when the secretary of the agency came out and said we're looking for, I think, high schools with at least 3,000 students. That was a little bit of I guess maybe a high school of 500 is not going to cut it with the legislature. And so what I'll say is that I think the interest in doing that is much higher than it was several years ago. And I think if, as small school boards like mine, small high schools like mine, can get a sense from the legislature what is going to be allowed, I think we'll have a much better saying, yes, it is worth sitting down and figuring that out. I mean, I will say in our area, one of the driving benefits of having a small high school, and I'm testimony to that, I had 3 boys that enjoyed the heck out of high school because it was small enough to be able to make any team they wanted to be on, but large enough to allow those teams to be there. If you can get that sweet spot, okay? That sweet spot is no longer as sweet as it used to be. Okay, we have to have kids go to another town to play on a soccer team. So one of the reasons that we, as a small school, said maybe if we just pull our 3 high schools together, it would be a good number, is that you would potentially have within 10 miles, you could get yourself down to the soccer field for practice. On the other hand, if you closed and your kids went to the academy, or if the state made you go into a high school of 5,000 kids, there's many less kids in our 3 high schools who would play soccer or anything else. Okay, I know even though there's freshman JV teams. So the sweet spot for small high schools is that we, I think, pushed back for a long time on merging because we said we have what we want. We have sports teams, we have good teachers, we have electives, and that's, I think, changed radically for at least more than a few high schools in the last decade. So I think the appetite is much stronger. And I think if we were to come out of this legislative session, hearing from the legislature saying, we'll entertain high schools of 500 or 600 students as long as you can show us that they work. But I think that to answer your question, sir, I think there was a sort of a big time pause a year ago when we heard from the state about their mega school requirement, if you will.
And I didn't mean to be negative about that, but I'm saying is that, as we build this plan.
Yeah.
We have to assume once we hit that sweet spot, that we're gonna get, our declining population, student population is gonna start to increase again.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to deal with that at some point, so.
And
in a perfect world, you design a plan that takes all that into consideration, but education quality is the standard would really.
Yeah.
See.
But I think that, a lot of the folks that I talk with have said, we'd love to have a school closer to home so our kids could participate more in extracurriculars and everything. We get there for open house, you get those for concerts. So I think the extent that the legislature would allow small regional high schools would, I think, not only make it more attractive to the school boards and the communities that are here, but also might make it more attractive to people who are considering moving to Lower Cabot or West Danville or what have you.
There's a question over here, but let me just ask you, how far are you from the academy?
We are probably 25 miles. Danville is 10 miles. And so we're probably having our drive from where I live in Cabot.
Okay.
And 40 minutes from Linden.
Okay. Senator Hufford.
Go ahead.
So it's a double-edged sword what you just said about having a small school that brings the people in. And then, but your taxes are getting so high, they can't afford to live there to come there in the first place. So it's a double-edged sword right now. It's finding just what you said, that sweet spot.
Okay.
However, the job of this committee and the rest of Vermont is saying, want your taxes to go down and you want good education. And you want small schools. The 3 of them are not going to work.
Okay.
And
I heard that 3-legged stool.
Yeah, and it is a good analogy.
Yeah.
But it's the truth. And our committee is tasked with what are you going to do? And every small school comes in and says, we're not going to close any schools. What's going to happen is we want the communities to decide.
Sure.
And you're not wanting to do it. And it's like, well, if you're not wanting to do it, we're gonna give criteria to say if it doesn't meet this and this, then more than likely that's gonna happen to your school. I believe that's the most the fair way to do it for the state. We don't wanna do it.
Yeah.
Don't wanna do it at all. If we keep schools just the way they are.
Well, I guess I'll just repeat to what I said to your colleague a minute ago. I think the appetite is much larger than it used to be for making that voluntary merger, at least at some level. But I want to just return to the tax thing. I was reading in one of the articles in the last month or so that in the last 5 years, the property taxes across the state have gone up like 40%. We have, I guess I will say, even though it's a challenge for school board members, we have had over the past 6 or 7 years, for a while, there was a penalty threshold, which was very well known in our community. And as a result of that, we were, I think, as a school, fairly frugal in our increases. And over that 5-year period, the Cabot School, I mentioned the $1.30 versus $2 the next town over at the Union School. We went up by about 18% over 5 years, which is 3% a year. So I think the challenge more in our community is not so much the high cost of property taxes, but housing for people to come in and live there and attend school. And also, frankly, keeping the school strong enough to make sure it attracts folks.
No, it's a beautiful spot.
Yeah. So I think to answer the question about the regional high school, my family,
Regional high schools are so far down the line that we have to get this under control.
Sure.
We have enough money to even
Okay.
start.
well, let's just say in this situation that 3 high schools like ours, Danville, Smithfield, and Cabot, decided they might or they might not, but I think the discussion is probably going to happen if they're allowed to. What does it look like if we increase our opportunities by coming together as a high school union school district with the facilities we have and figure out how that can work to improve opportunity? I don't think anybody wants to wait for construction, although that would be great to have this. We need something quicker than that, both for the people who are here and the people who are thinking of moving here.
So I get back to the one district so you guys can do all the stuff you need to do to make it happen, but that's another time.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity to chat with you today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you too.
Mark, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't know you do double duty.
I do many duties. This is one of the hats I have.
Goodness.
The way you're surviving.
Yeah. Like fine, rich. So. Today, for the record, my name is Mark Hannigan. I'm the chair of the Addison Northwest School District. So forget that I'm not wearing my thing. I'm not the SPA right now. Thank you for the opportunity to testify regarding Senator Bogart's proposed redistricting map, broader direction of Vermont's education governance reform. After these comments, from the perspective of a local school board chair charged with balancing educational quality, fiscal responsibility, and community trust. While I appreciate the effort to move this conversation forward, I have significant concerns that the current proposal does not meaningfully improve upon a system that seeks to be replaced. At its core, the proposed redistricting map appears to preserve rather than transform Vermont's existing supervisory union governance framework. This raises a fundamental concern. If the goal of redistricting is to simplify governance, improve accountability, create more coherent systems of decision-making, it's unclear how maintaining layered governance structures achieves this outcome. Supervisory unions have historically served purpose, particularly in supporting smaller districts. However, they have contributed to fragmentation, diffuse accountability, and inefficiencies in decision-making. A reform effort that largely replicates these structures risks reinforcing the very challenges that policymakers have long sought to address. If Vermont is to undertake significant structural change, it should result in clearer lines of authority, more direct accountability to voters, and a governance model that is easier, not harder for communities to understand. The second major concern is the absence of meaningful restructuring regarding the role and regulation of independent schools within Vermont's publicly funded education system. Vermont's longstanding tuition model, while rooted in history, local choice, operates within a regulatory framework that differs significantly from that which is required in public schools. Any comprehensive reform efforts should take a hard look at these differences, particularly in the areas of accountability, transparency, financial oversight. Current proposal does not seem to address these disparities in a substantial way, without re-examining how independent schools are integrated into the public funded system. State risks perpetuating inequalities and inconsistencies that complicate both governance and fiscal stewardship. Third, one of the primary drivers behind governance reform is the expectation of improved efficiency and cost containment. However, it is not evident this proposed redistricting map would generate meaningful savings compared to the current system. Maintaining existing structures suggests that administrative costs, staffing configurations, and service delivery models would remain largely unchanged. Without clear mechanisms for consolidation, shared service expansion, or structural streamlining, it is difficult to identify where significant savings would be realized. In the absence of demonstrated fiscal benefits, the proposal risks imposing a disruption of change without delivering financial relief that Vermont taxpayers and communities are seeking. Most importantly, this proposal does not clearly articulate how it would improve educational outcomes for Vermont's students. Governance reform should ultimately be judged by its impact on students, stronger academic outcomes, expanded opportunities, improved equity, and better support systems. Yet the current framework appears focused primarily on structural realignment rather than educational advancement. It's unclear that the proposed configuration would enhance curriculum offerings, improve student achievement, or address persistent challenges such as declining enrollment, staffing shortages, or disparities in access to programs. If the state undertakes significant reorganization, it must be driven by a clear, compelling vision for how students will benefit, not simply by changing governance boundaries. Vermont has an opportunity to thoroughly reconsider how its education is organized and delivered. That work is both necessary and urgent. However, meaningful reform requires that more than redrawing lines on a map. It requires a clear departure from structures that have proven inefficient, a willingness to address long-standing inconsistencies in the system, and a focus on measured improvements for students. As currently presented, this proposal raises more questions than it answers. I respectfully urge this committee to continue its work with focus on simplifying governance, strengthening accountability, ensuring consistent oversight across all publicly funded schools, identifying and delivering tangible cost savings, centering student outcomes is the primary measure of success. Thank you for your time.
So did that testimony have anything to do with your school? Because that was BSBA testimony.
No, that was me.
No, it was BSBA. Well, anyway, it sounded echoed. So I'm just curious. I'm curious about what it, you're here as chair of your board.
Yep.
Talk to us about your school, your district.
So I can go over some of the questions that have been raised the last couple of days. I was an SU at the Addison Northwest was the supervisory union. Act 46, we did merge, became a supervisory district. That was beneficial to us, but it was hard. But it wasn't as hard as some. We already had a shared master agreement with teachers and staff, so we didn't have to find that. That had been done earlier. Since that time, we closed one of our elementary schools. So we have 2 elementary schools. We now have a true middle school behind a middle high school, and now we have a 6, 7, 8. So
where is that?
Within the high school, but it's
And that is where?
in Virginia.
In Virginia, okay.
So my towns are Ferrisburg, Virginia, Canton, Waltham, and Addison. I would close the Addison Central Elementary School, mostly because it's just too small.
So are you in the gray area or the?
We're in the gray areas.
Okay,
Is that Otter?
so this,
Otter Creek is lower. My Virginia's elementary or Virginia's union is lower.
so as it relates to where you are, in the gray area, so you're an SD.
For both yours and Peter's maps, we are going to probably be the Addison County district. They, both of them kind of create the little very Mount Abe and
So you're happy with your district and its placement on the map?
Yes, I mean, I realize, it's probably make my superintendent unhappy. I realize that we are too small. we have budgeting problems because we have 800 kids pre-K through high school. We have Mount Abe just a few miles away. We have Middlebury just a few miles away. CBU is not that far away. So there are options. We have tried to merge beyond the last time we did. We went through a merger study and then a vote to merge Mount Abe and as Northwest a few years ago, and it went down in flames for different reasons on both sides. But I think, as was just stated, now times have changed. We might be more interested in communities in doing something because both of them are in problems. But we do already share a lot. We share sports teams. We share all of our nutrition. So we have one nutrition director for both of those schools. We buy and both share the same menus. We realigned our times for our classes and our teachers' days so that we can share classes. Went into effect last year, but because of scheduling, it didn't happen. But we have set it up so that if students want to take French, because we don't offer French, but they do, they can go over and take French, but they would need to be signed up. And they could give us 2 or 3 classes. You would just go over for one class because of transportation issues. But we're doing our best to try and figure out how can we consolidate without actually merging until we need to merge. So we're sharing as many resources as we can and sharing as much as we can within the capacity that we have.
So you do realize that the foundation formula does save money because it has a fixed number and then a fixed multiplier. So when I hear people say it doesn't save money, there's no evidence it save money, I go, well, wait a minute. Foundation formula has a starting point and then has a fixed multiplier that definitely lowers the rate of increase. So how does the won't save money part?
My concern is more in how districts are being, like a merger itself is not necessarily going to save money. I was talking about the foundation formula. I was talking about the maps.
Okay, so the theory, just to have the discussion, the theory is that by shrinking the number of the foundation formula does fit better, work better as districts get larger. And so if I shrink the number of districts, we're going to tend to have larger districts and try to help towns get their first on their own and then go. So that's the theory under that. And if the foundation formula is coming, it does, I'm just curious if you're almost saying the same thing. You're almost saying we do need larger districts or to get to.
I think based on the fact we have declining enrollment, yes, we have fewer students, we can't really populate the same number of buildings. It's inevitable. It just becomes a matter of Addison's. I want to see we're easy. We're flat. There's no mountains in between us. There's no major rivers. We're pretty close together. And we still could merge under voluntary circumstances. There were no carrots and sticks. So maybe if there was something that way, it would have been a little easier for us to do it. But you get into some of the other regions, it becomes a lot more difficult for transportation issues, for things like that. So I do not envy.
Okay. Yes.
So how many municipalities are you talking about?
For me or for our region?
For your region?
I have 5.
So you guys started anything at all? You know, my district, we've had towns that are in a school district actually got together to petition and put it on the ballot on town meeting day to close a school and merge.
Right, we did all.
Okay, so you've done.
We have closed a small
So did
school.
it pass?
We did not pass that's what I was saying is that we merged under 46. So it was 3 elementary schools were their own districts and the high school and then the SU. That all became one district, became one. A few years later, we closed one of the elementary schools. So we went down to 2 elementary schools and high schools. We had 3 buildings. A few years ago, we had a study committee to try and merge with Mount Abe School District. Spent a year getting all of that together, put it to the voters. Both communities, both districts said no. Mount Abe didn't want to incur Addison Northwest debt because we spent a lot of money to keep our buildings in top shape. The Addison Northwest voters weren't happy about being a minority group at the table because we were worried they're going to take all of our tax money and fix their buildings. They haven't been able to get bonds for it. And so that was a number of years ago, and both sides have gotten even smaller. As I said, we, even without the merger though, we share with Mount A all the time. We have a lot work together so that we're trying to contain costs as much as we can without actually formally merging. But I meet with all 5 board chairs in my area. So I've got Mount A, Lincoln, Hannaford Career Center, Addison Central, and then us. So we meet, I talk with the chair of CVU on a regular basis to try and figure out how we might be able to do something. So the talk is there and we know we have to do something. We just have to kind of figure out what. And now with all of this going on, no one's really sure about making a step until we know that that step would actually be something that would have to be undone because something else happened.
So what ended up being the stick?
I think you guys have to be a carrot and a stick.
So as it relates to your district, is your placement on the map in the gray area consistent with your desire? Are you happy with your placement?
I think it makes the most sense. We are not interested in an SU structure.
Okay.
So being there, we do know that, your idea of voluntary mergers aligns with what we've been talking about informally. I'm just worried about, and it's not just in here, it's the entire discussion is that we're all talking about money and lines and we're losing, well, how is this actually going to impact the kid in the classroom? Might impact somebody's property tax, but that doesn't necessarily mean there's better education, and that's the whole point of all of this work. So I tell all my boards, all my parents, like, if we're not doing something with kids, then there's not really a reason for us to be here.
I try to think a lot about what we're doing for the kids. I think everybody does. And,
Just get lost.
right. Well, from our conversation with Mr. Tormia, I've been thinking about something, which is, regional high schools are economic engines in and of themselves. We're trying to get out of a death spiral, right? Like, I'm not just thinking about kids, I'm thinking about how families cannot survive in Vermont. And so the elementary schools become the canary in the coal mine because as more people don't have kids or can't move into the area, you're starting with your elementary schools are hemorrhaging. And you have maybe some large groups in the high school that are, moving on. And as there are less and less opportunities, or there's not this sort of positive feedback loop in your high schools, you don't have something that attracts people that says, wow, there's a really excellent high school that they're going to go to where they can choose any athletic program, anything they want. We generally agree on a lot of things. I just really push back on this notion that, we're thinking about kids by holding on to buildings. Because there's fewer and fewer kids in those buildings. And that impacts them. And it especially impacts them middle and then absolutely high school. I went to high school 5,000 kids. Was that great? No. But I do not want my kids to go to a high school where you can't put a sports team together.
And I'm not saying that I'm not in favor of tiny schools. We closed one of the small school we had, and it was big pushback for that community for that very reason. But it was.
But you're not going to get more elementary school kids just by having an elementary school. It's just not going to happen. It's housing and a regional high school that gives people opportunities to stay in
And
their
Mark,
community.
with Addison closing, it's been a fairly smooth, have you heard a lot from Addison or?
I think
has
we
it-
still, so the main pushback was from Addison residents who did not have kids in the school. We're like, I went there, my kids went there, we spent a lot of money there, I helped plant that garden.
Right.
Every parent that I know who had a kid in the school at that time was ecstatic that their kid was now going to the Virgins Elementary School where they could have music and art every day, where they had.
See, we need to hear more of that.
They have that.
Because it was no different when they started closing one.
They should be
schoolhouse.
museums. That doesn't help you get more kids.
When I'm going off topic.
But no, I say,
I don't think we're on, I don't know what I said that makes you think that we're opposite, because
Well, that we're not thinking about kids.
No, I just mean it gets lost. I feel like it gets lost when we start talking more and more about property taxes, or we're talking about lines on a map, or we're talking about SU versus SD. just the idea of, and how are any of those things actually going to impact the kid in math class? And maybe it does, it's just so it gets lost in the conversation. I just wanted to redirect this. Like, at the end of the day, all of this has to somehow touch back to
I think what we're trying to do is get to some improved level of efficiency within the realities of the Vermont landscape and the way that things actually work. I think that's what we're going to do. Not trying to solve every issue or if we think that 119 districts is too many for a state with about 83,000 kids, we're trying to have that issue.
And I think that is an important thing to solve.
That will help with governance. That will help provide more opportunity, and to the extent that the foundation formula is coming online, will help make the foundation formula. It'll be a better fit for the foundation formula. That's the theory. That's what we're looking at, and the theory is and the hope is that actually both reduces the rate of increase in property taxes and improves education. That's what we're shooting for.
So I got a point that I had a friend that his daughter came to visit from Missouri. And, you know, of course, the parents are divorced, and she got mad at mom. Missouri. She was, well, I want to be mom. And she's a sophomore and started looking into the educational opportunities. That was wild that a sophomore would do that, but she did. And she goes, there's no opportunities here for me to learn.
I know.
And it was amazing that she said that. She came from a school to that. But she goes, you know, AP courses to art class she just don't have it. And then she went on saying, what I saw I was going to learn in curriculum in 11th and 12th, I'd already learned in 9th and 10th research. And it's like, that's an eye opener. So that we're not doing our students, our children justice with our schools. We have to do that. And if it means getting more in classrooms so it helps, or a bigger school so they have more interaction, I think it's important. But then we have Cabot. It's like, hey, we've always been this way. And we're going to find it. We got to find it. And it's our job, unfortunately.
Thank you. We have one more witness who's been waiting for a while. See that through for that.
Am I standing between you and going home?
Okay, you can take your all the time.
We live here tomorrow.
No.
That's right. We don't
But we felt you kept you here for a while. So.
No, it's fine. It's interesting. It's very interesting to listen to everybody's different perspectives.
Yeah.
So good afternoon, senators. For the record, my name is Debbie Slingheiser, and I know some of you already. I am a school board member who has served on a district board within the Rutland Northeast Supervisory Union for about 8 years. I thank you for this opportunity to provide feedback on the redistricting map that your committee is considering. I am here to speak specifically to the governance implications of your proposed redistricting map. I will leave the discussion of operations to superintendents who are better positioned to speak to those matters. My focus will be on governance, and it is from that perspective that I ask you to consider what I have observed firsthand. First, I want to say that
just so we know, are you talking generally? Are you talking about your district and the effect?
I'm going to be talking about, I'm using my district as an illustrative example. Yeah.
So particularly interested in knowing about where your district is in the map and whether the boundaries make sense for you, for your district.
Okay, I'm happy to respond to that question. Yeah, I do want to talk about things that I'm seeing happening right now in our SU. So first, I want to say that I do support all 6 goals in the legislation that accompanies the map. However, for today, I'd like to focus my testimony on goal number 1, improving governance efficiency, and goal number 2, enabling higher quality educational delivery. I believe that the way we accomplish these 2 goals is by moving our state away from the supervisory union model and toward the supervisory district model. I believe this change would result in more efficient, more equitable, and more responsive governance for Vermont students, families, and communities. And here's why. The first problem with supervisory union governance is budgeting. I would like to give you a current example to illustrate one of the problems with the SU model that is happening right now at Rutland Northeast Supervisory Union, which is composed of two unified union school districts, Barstow and Otter Valley. This year, the FY 27 Barstow Unified Union School District budget passed when voters went to the polls on town meeting day. Unfortunately, however, the Otter Valley Unified Union School District budget failed. In a supervisory union structure, when one district's budget fails, that board's options are severely limited. Because Barstow voters had already officially adopted the shared budget, which includes the central office budget, Otter Valley's board had no ability to revisit or reduce any central office expenses because those figures were already locked in. Otter Valley's board was therefore limited to making cuts only within their own district budget. And that is precisely what happened earlier this week. In order to reduce costs, their board eliminated student-facing positions, a global language teacher, and a portion of an academic coach. These are direct cuts to student programming. Students in Otter Valley School District will bear the consequences of a governance structure that tied their board's hands. So, and as an aside, and I say this not rhetorically, but genuinely, I find it hard to reconcile our obligation to prepare students for citizenship in a global society with a governance structure that makes a global language teacher one of the first casualties of a failed budget. This is not a hypothetical situation. It is happening right now in our SU during this budget cycle. In a supervisory district, this situation would be handled differently. All voters across all member towns vote on a single unified budget, and that budget either passes or fails as a whole. If it fails, the board reconvenes to deliberate across the whole budget, including central office costs, and returns to voters with a revised proposal. No single community is left bearing the burden of cuts alone, and no board is prevented from considering the full picture.
Can I pause you right there just for a second?
Sure.
How many students were enrolled in the global language course?
See, that's not my district, so I'm not that familiar.
Okay, it'd be good to know, because if they only had 3 or 4 students, then
And I can get you that information
that'd
for
be great.
sure.
Thank you. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's fine. It's a very good question. So there's a second governance concern with the supervisory union model that I want to share, and that is superintendent capacity. In an SU, a superintendent is required to attend multiple district board meetings, presenting similar reports, sharing the same information, and fulfilling the same functions repeatedly across separate boards. I am not a big proponent of repeating the same task multiple times when once will do. This is an inefficient use of one of our most valuable educational resources, our superintendents. While a superintendent must attend to governance, they are first and foremost the CEO of their district. They're responsible for a wide range of daily operational demands. And when that superintendent is preparing for and attending multiple board meetings each month, governance begins to cannibalize the time that should be spent on operations, including the instructional leadership that directly benefits our students. A superintendent operating within a supervisory district attends fewer board meetings and has greater capacity to serve as an instructional leader. And that is where we want our educational leaders spending their time. A supervisory district structure, therefore, makes that possible in a way that a supervisory union does not. Now, I'm aware that one argument made for retaining supervisory unions is the continuation of school choice. That is paying tuition on the student's behalf to attend a school of their choosing. And I want to address this issue directly. I am not opposed to school choice. However, I am concerned about how it is currently functioning. And protecting school choice in its current form should not come at the cost of better, more efficient governance. As chair of the Barstow School Board, I watched a trend emerge in our district. Over the course of 5 years, we paid 122 school tuitions to independent schools, and only half were for students who graduated from Barstow's 8th grade. Independent schools enrollment among our high school students climbed from 16% in fiscal year 21 to 35% in fiscal year 25. At one independent school alone, Killington Mountain School, we tuitioned 13 students in a single year, 10 of whom had never attended our K-8 program at Barstow. Local taxpayers are increasingly funding education for students with limited or only temporary ties to our community. This is not a sustainable or equitable use of public education dollars. School choice as currently structured is creating challenges to our board's ability to plan, budget, and deliver a strong public education for the students who are genuinely rooted in our communities, those that are attending Barstow School. So I urge this committee to consider establishing guardrails around school choice, such as limiting public tuition payments to public schools, or requiring that tuitions for independent schools be available only to students who have attended a school in the tuition district for a defined period of time. What we should not do is perpetuate inefficient governance structures in order to preserve a school choice system that itself needs reform. So in closing, the proposed map before you presents a wonderful opportunity to transform how Vermont governs its public schools. I respectfully urge this committee to move toward a supervisory district model statewide, one that gives all communities an equal voice in budget decision, uses superintendent time and leadership more effectively, and does not leave any single district students bearing the consequences of an inefficient governance structure. And I thank you for your time and thank you for your service to Vermont students.
Thank you. Questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Can't let her get out of here without some pointed questions.
I would be offended. Thank you.
So, your area
Yeah.
is unique in the state, well, pretty unique in that, and you've made this, tuitioning issue quite apparent to us over a variety of school board meetings over a variety of years, and fully understand that. I'm just wondering if, and I need to kind of study your words a little closer because I know you tend to embed a lot of concepts into a pretty condensed piece of writing.
Mhm.
So I haven't digested the whole thing, although I've read through it all. Do you think that the foundation formula concept would help that scenario where it really wouldn't make a difference that your residents' children are going to school A or school B, given you have choice? That, okay.
I
So
couldn't say. I couldn't say.
curious if you had thought that.
No.
Go ahead.
Thank you. My question regarding the statewide supervisory district model is the idea to create, so do away with supervisory unions and then take all the school districts that currently exist and make them supervisory districts, or merging a number of school districts into new supervisory districts. Is that
Well, if our goal is to decrease the number of entities or districts across the state, then no, I don't want to see 119 supervisory districts. No, that would not be. The idea is looking at a map like this, where you are consolidating districts, instead of having them be SUs, have them be SDs, supervisory districts. So one board per district.
that's what I thought, but I wasn't quite sure. So what you're suggesting then, just so I'm on the same page, is all of these different colored sections becoming their own supervisory districts.
Well, I'm not even saying that,
Okay.
because those are huge. When I look at their size relative to our current SDs, supervisory districts, they're much bigger in
Yeah.
terms of geographic area as well as student population.
About the same student
schools.
population, actually.
Oh, they are.
These are, yes.
It's the same as like these.
Up close, not so much these, but these are, what you say, 20
they're all about, the color guards are all about 2,700
students.
and some of the districts in the gray are over that. I think five or six are above 2,500, and a few others within the gray area would need to get merged to reach up
To reach up to that number.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So So I think one, just think for what it's worth,
Yeah, you're welcome.
the notion of the foundation formula, of course, would deal with any of those budgets passing or not passing, because they wouldn't be passing the budgets anymore. So, and then the other, just, play it out here, the other part of this was to reduce the number of districts by 50%,
Right,
which would also deal a lot with superintendent time.
Right.
Because we have,
so just looking at our region, since you asked me about
Yeah,
that earlier, Senator.
so where are you? Show
So
us
we're in the Rutland area one.
in the blue area.
In the blue area.
Yeah.
So looking at that, area or supervisory union proposed SU number 6, I counted, 24 towns and 8 districts currently. So I think in the legislation that I read, or the legislative language I read, is that you're proposing to have the number of districts in each of those proposed SUs. So that would be 4 districts.
It's
in
actually not by SU.
Okay,
It's actually
By the
statewide. So
state.
some would be more, some would be fewer.
okay,
That's another, we can get into that if we how that would work, but,
okay,
but yeah, potentially it could be, that would be a good, perhaps a good goal for that district.
Right.
That is you
right.
to get that out.
Yeah, it doesn't get to solving the problems that I'm noticing right now, and being inside of SU when there's a failed budget. How that is very difficult if one district passes and the other doesn't.
Just, not to argue the point, but that wouldn't be the case in the foundation book on
Well, that's true.
no budget.
Yeah.
So that would not be.
Yeah. And then my other concern definitely is superintendent capacity, because I hear that a lot. I mean, we're just 2 districts.
Yeah.
And our superintendent is stretched already with 2 districts, so anything more will just make it that much more time consuming and difficult.
So do you have a configuration that would make sense from your perspective?
Sure, John.
Yeah.
Well, to that point, can I offer a concept and see if it makes sense?
Sure, yeah,
So part of the task here is to balance out local control, local input as it currently exists with some future state.
Mhm.
Okay. And I agree with you completely that superintendents shouldn't be spending the bulk of their time bouncing around from board to board.
right,
I thought the concept with these larger districts, SUs, whatever you want, whatever the name is in the end, that you have a superintendent, one superintendent with a much larger geographic footprint that has a board that works for that entire larger region.
right,
That the districts which currently exist, like yours, continue to exist. They report into, or they are represented by, one school board member sitting at the table at the new, larger regional school board that reports into that, or has that relationship with the single superintendent. Do you think that's a balance where we are now with very micro local control and input to a future state that addresses your concern about the capacity of the superintendent?
so let me see if I understand. So what you're saying is that we have supervisory unions still. And the districts would still exist. We're not changing the number of the districts inside the supervisory union. And each district would have one board member that sits on that super board, let's call it, at the supervisory union level. Would that, and then therefore, that superintendent would be going to one board meeting a month. And that one board would carry the responsibilities and the roles. It would definitely help the superintendent's capacity. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah, because it's reporting to one board. You don't run into, another challenge. I didn't talk about this in my testimony, but I have seen this, wearing my other hat, working at the VSBA, is sometimes I do get, calls from districts who are having challenges or problems with the superintendent, but if not all the other districts are, then it's very hard to take any action um, or it's difficult because as a district board, your superintendent's not, your superintendent reports to the supervisory union board. So if you have 6 districts and 1 district or 2 districts are not happy with the superintendent, they don't have much ability to change anything. That's another reason another challenge I see from the governance side of it.
The questions?
I do, because you can't let her get off so easy.
Yeah.
We had this big trip. All right, so, your first point.
Yeah.
Was about, eliminating, student facing positions.
Yeah.
Okay, so. Population of students is on a decline,
Right.
but the budgets continue to increase. It would seem that if the student populations are declining, that the student facing positions would also be on a decline. So if you had 40, 50 teachers and your population drops 3-4% a year, that you should anticipate a similar effect on the faculty. Is that fair?
Yeah, oh, definitely. I mean, when yeah.
Because we hear it a lot in here.
The challenge is the transition. I mean, it's similar. It's a challenge that we went through ourselves in our own district where you're moving as your population's declining. You're trying as a board to figure out what's the staffing, what is the staffing that we need. Now, when you have 40 students in a grade, it makes sense to have 2 classes, right? But as you go down slowly, at what point do you say, okay, now we're only that, here's the sweet spot. We talked about that earlier, the sweet spot to have one class per grade, therefore 1 teacher per grade. It's that gets tricky to manage.
Sure.
Yeah, and yeah, so that's what I have to say about that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, we were on, your second paragraph or first paragraph on the last sheet. It talked about, school board, and we got into independent schools. This gets me because, a lot when we have people come in and say, we spend public dollars should stay in public schools, when that's not true anywhere else in the government agency, that our money just doesn't stay in that government's, like, let's take agency of transportation, constantly hiring outside private help to maintain roads and that. Shouldn't it be up to the parent? And if you're paying taxes in that town, I heard what you said there, that, they didn't even go to our school, yet we're paying the tax, but the parent lives in that town and is paying taxes. So that's why it's coming out of their budget. But if the goal here is what is best for our students and where they're getting the best education, be it an independent school that doesn't have the same, have to hang on to the same standards as a public school, yet the outcome of the child's education is better. Why is there such a battle there, people even the public system? Like you said, you had 13 students that went off to Killington Mountain School. And now the parents and student must believe that was the better place for their education.
So,
And if we only tuition, whatever the tuition goes to the high school, why is that such a big argument?
so my issue and my concern with that case is that it's not the number of students that went to Killington Mountain School. It's the fact that they didn't live in our district beforehand
So they moved in there some
to access that
so
tuition.
and to access that tuition. Okay. How do we stop that? Because we have people come in different agencies, let's say for the hotel motel program, that as soon as that person put their foot in Vermont, now they're eligible. And it's like, we wanted to put a stipulation on that here. Oh, no, you can't. But if you're there paying that tax and you moved there just so you can take advantage of it, I don't know how we could put a stop on that, but,
Well, I offered a couple suggestions, like requiring that, that second suggestion is requiring a student who accesses those tuition dollars from independent school, have them reside in that district for a minimum number of years. It's similar to going to a public university. Like we can't, if you want to go to the University of Florida and you live in Vermont, I think you have to be in Florida for a certain number of years to establish your residency before you can access that in-state tuition, right? So it's the same.
I agree with
concept.
that, but it makes it very hard once you start setting that standard because,
Right.
you know, I had a 4-year-old and I said, oh, if I move into their town, then I can send them up. So for 2 years I paid for sending them to school. How would that work out? Because now they paid, but they never intended to send it to the public school because they can get tuition to go to private, independent school. I hear where you're coming from, but it just opens that Pandora's box of trouble.
I think the intent of school choice, at least in our district, was never this. It was, we operate a K-8 program and we need to tuition our students to high school. Right. I don't think any of us, when this started, foresaw what is happening, where those numbers that we're seeing doubling to independent schools, especially more and more of those students being from other parts of Vermont to come so they can access Killington Mountain School, or coming from out of state to access.
What is
that.
Killington Mountain School? Is that just a
Student
school?
academy.
She's-
Yes, it's a school.
Well, if your student ends up winning the Olympics, then it's worth every job, I guess.
Yeah, well, and the other point I'd like to just reiterate and underscore is that it does make it harder for us as a board to budget for our K-8 program.
I do.
Because that pie is only so big, and the bigger that tuition piece for secondary school grows, the less there's left over for the rest for the K-8 program. And we've seen that piece of the pie has gotten bigger. So it means that we might have to cut some student facing positions that we don't wish to.
So if we went down to the foundation formula, then it would be much easier for you to say, oh, there's 13 students that there's all we're gonna do.
If being that your situation is really rather unique, I mean, there's probably other communities.
I think there's other communities,
There are,
yeah.
but it's still pretty unique.
Okay.
If you could put a few minutes of thought, offline into how the foundation formula would or
Sure,
would not affect that scenario,
sure.
just kind of
Happy
like,
to.
you know, doodle out, you know, would it help or would it hurt or is it neutral?
Yeah.
That would be helpful because we understand the problem, or at least the, perceived problem, challenge. And we'd like to know if this solution, if the foundation formula is part of a solution,
Okay.
would be good to know.
Okay. Yep, be happy to do that. Appreciate that opportunity.
All right.
You missed the.
Sorry, I know, I kept looking at you thinking, I want you to go before.
Well, thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you for your time.
No, thank you for your time
I will listen.
and your questions.
So, the libraries, back to the library bill. The appropriations committee and approve the amendment as presented with the Mary versus the town.
That is disappointing.
So this committee has to decide what it wants to do.
Do we have, sometimes what happens is a member of the committee goes over to appropriations to sort of have it out.
It's on the enforcer.
Yeah, you don't know that. I don't mean to have it out, but like. I think it's better to understand the reasoning and have someone in the room who's like gonna defend our position, but not like do it separate.
Who is it? Just again, kind of, this is appropriations, not finance.
Appropriations, yeah.
Do you want to know the
Yeah,
Senator Baruth, Senator Lyons, Senator Perchlik, Senator Westman, Senator Brennan, Senator Norris, Senator Watson? I was just in there for candidates. I like how we're having a throwdown over libraries, you know, toward the end of the week. That's always fun.
Well, so just it's pressure. Especially.
no good deed goes on.
I'm trying to think who does their, probably their education budget and their library budget are the same member.
Yeah, that is, yeah. I,
It could be Senator Bruce. Do you think it's Bruce? Yeah, Bruce has always been education until recently.
It won't be on the floor, until Tuesday.
Yeah.
So we should just thinking, yeah, well, okay. I think we are adjourned, man.